They found her wedding ring lying half-buried in the powdery white sand, hours after a desperate struggle in the dead of night that no one was supposed to witness. The security footage from the Nova Atoll resort showed a shadow slipping silently from a beachside villa, but to the departing guests lost in their honeymoon bliss, paradise had already turned fatal and irretrievable. If you want more jaw-dropping true crime stories, make sure to hit subscribe and never miss the darkness beneath the headlines. But let's go back to where it all began. The Maldives. The name itself promises turquoise waters, gentle breezes, and luxury removed from the complications of everyday life. Nova Atoll Resort was supposed to be that promise fulfilled for Nisha and Henrik, newlyweds escaping the responsibilities and expectations of life in Sweden. Their villa, glass-walled and perched just above the tide, felt built for romance, a place where secrets melted into tranquil sunrises and the world faded away. Yet, even paradise can't keep shadows at bay. Among the staff was Aman, a 26-year-old Indian man from Kerala who watched the guests' happiness from the corners of his quiet routines. He worked hard for his family back home, shy but attentive, his eyes always drawn to what he could never have. Nisha, fresh from wedding celebrations, noticed his politeness and sometimes returned a gentle word when Henrik was absent on yet another diving or fishing expedition. As the days passed, stolen moments grew into risky encounters. Nisha lingered at the pool bar after sunset, listening to Aman's stories about fishing, the sea, and the hardships of staff life. The first time their fingers touched, it was by accident, then by intent. Whispers became confessions. Glances turned into midnight meetings behind swaying palms. The villa, meant to be a bubble, became a crucible for a forbidden flirtation. They believed they were careful, but island life leaves few secrets. Rumors started when a cleaning staff member noticed footprints near Nisha's terrace that didn't belong to Henrik. The hotel manager was quietly alerted, but wanted only calm for the wealthy guests, at least until the rumors turned to something more. Henrik returned unexpectedly early from a fishing trip, sunburned and fueled by too many drinks. His argument with Nisha grew loud. Doors slammed, a glass broke by the pool, and the hotel's night security cameras caught shadows moving where they shouldn't. Henrik accused Nisha, and Nisha wept, threatening to leave. Aman, drawn into the storm, tried to intervene, but nobody could agree later on just how it happened. Some say Henrik lunged, others that Nisha screamed for help. There was a struggle near the infinity pool, the shimmer of moonlight on water, and the soft thud of something precious falling into the sand. Blood trailed from the tiled path down to the beach, the tide erasing evidence almost as quickly as it was made. By dawn, the chaos was undeniable. Henrik's body was found at the shoreline, water swirling around his limbs. Nisha, shaken and confused, faltered through 3 versions of her story. In one, Henrik was abusive and Aman defended her. In another, it was an accident meant for protection gone tragically wrong. Sometimes she simply couldn't remember, insisting everything blurred after she found her ring was missing. While the island police began their investigation, staff searched for Aman. He had vanished, leaving behind clothes in the staff quarters and a trail into the trees. Nisha was detained for questioning, her phone combed for evidence. Messages to and from Aman revealed panic, longing, and urgent plans to run away together. Both families, Nisha's in Sweden, Aman's in India, were dragged into the scandal as international press and embassies circled. The world, watching from afar, consumed headlines. Honeymoon in the Maldives ends in blood, bride, lover, and tragedy on Paradise Island. The trial in Malé became global news. Prosecutors and defense lawyers painted dueling portraits of passion and betrayal, violence and heartbreak. Was this a cold-blooded plot, a fatal triangle, or a misjudged rescue spiraling into chaos? In the end, both Nisha and Aman faced the weight of justice. Manslaughter for him, conspiracy for her. Yet the truth, just like the warm Indian Ocean, shifted with every retelling, never staying clear for long. To visiting couples, Maldives still whispered romance and peace. But in the hush of certain moonlit beaches, staff and guests sometimes passed the story in low voices. The missing ring, the secret meetings, and the honeymoon that ended with footprints and blood washed away by the tide. The first days after the tragedy at the resort passed in a stunned, watery haze. Under the blinding Maldivian sun, Nova Atoll's staff and guests drifted through their routines as if nothing had happened. Though beneath the surface, an uneasy tension gripped everyone who remembered the sirens and the stretchers in the pre-dawn light. Nisha's beachfront villa stood empty, curtains drawn against curious eyes. The laughter and music that once spilled from honeymoon suites had faded, leaving only questions and the hush of surf at night. Island authorities worked quickly, aware that every delay threatened the luxury resort's fragile reputation. Police combed the villa for evidence: a shattered glass on the terrace, the faint trace of blood on the edge of the pool, footprints in the sand, some large, some smaller, none quite matching. Nisha was held in the resort manager's office, her wedding dress now replaced by borrowed clothes a size too big, her hands trembling as she recounted her story again and again. She insisted it had been an accident, that Henrik's anger overwhelmed everything, that Aman had only tried to protect her. But each retelling grew looser at the edges, details spiraling out of reach as exhaustion and fear took hold. Aman, meanwhile, was still missing. The staff whispered about his disappearance. Some claimed he'd been seen stealing a speedboat. Others thought he hid among fishermen on a neighboring atoll. Management quietly doubled security, as if anyone on the island could ever truly disappear. Nisha's phone was confiscated, its messages scoured for secrets. Detectives pored over the texts, flirtations, confessions, frantic promises exchanged with Aman in the days before Henrik's death. One unread message: "I can't go on like this. Tomorrow," haunted the case file. Henrik's family arrived from Europe, faces pale with grief and disbelief. They demanded answers from the local police, the Swedish embassy, and even the hotel itself. The media soon followed, their cameras gliding over the turquoise water, alternating between images of paradise and the outline of Henrik's body taped in the sand. With every new report, fresh versions of the story emerged. Was Nisha a victim, or a cold conspirator? Was Aman truly in love, or just desperate for a way out? As the days stretched and the world watched, the staff received strict orders: speak to no one, keep guests happy, pretend the normal rhythm of the islands had not been interrupted. But behind closed doors, gossip swirled. Some maids claimed they'd heard shouting and sobbing from the suite, while a bartender recalled Nisha's urgent request for a drink late that night. "Anything strong, please," her hand shaking so much she nearly dropped the glass. Another worker, sweeping the beach at dawn, remembered seeing a figure, Aman, perhaps, glancing over his shoulder as he disappeared into the dense palm groves. Pressure mounted on the investigation. Interpol sent requests for background checks. Lawyers hovered in the hotel lobby. Local police broadened their search to docks and remote villages. When Aman was finally found, hiding in a thatched fisherman's hut, gaunt and haggard, he confessed to nothing. His family in India wrote tearful appeals to the press. He was only trying to help. He would never harm anyone. But Maldivian police, under the glare of the international spotlight, refused to release him. In her windowless room, Nisha waited, replaying every moment on the island. Her initial shock veered from heartbreak to icy resolve. Her legal team, flown in from Stockholm, rehearsed possible narratives, warning her never to admit to more than she must. When Henrik's parents visited, she broke down and apologized, but could not bring herself to describe the chaos of that night. The panic, the struggle at the pool's edge, the glint of wedding rings in the moonlight, as everything she had planned slipped away. Across the island, the tranquility was gone. Some guests packed early, others stayed for the drama, whispering on loungers about the murder villa. Nisha became an unwitting symbol of how quickly love turns into tragedy, while Aman's absence was discussed in every staff meeting as a dire warning. The Maldives, desperate to reclaim its postcard calm, struggled to convince the world this was a fluke, not a failing. Weeks passed, and the world moved on, but Nova Atoll bore scars the tide could not erase. A villa left empty, a staff divided, and new couples glancing at each other with just a hint of suspicion as the sun set blood red behind the palms. The story, of love, betrayal, and that fatal honeymoon lingered on, retold in low voices long after the news crews left, just as the breakers washed the beach clean night after night. The whispers inside the Nova Atoll resort only grew heavier with every passing day. Nisha's villa, once filled with laughter and the promise of new beginnings, was now a silent reminder of tragedy. She moved through interviews with the Maldivian police in a daze, repeating her version of the night to different officials, each time watched with suspicion. The suite was sealed, the once pristine pool now swarmed by investigators photographing stains no one had noticed before. Outside, resort staff exchanged anxious glances and avoided her eyes in the corridors. No one dared say what they were all thinking. Aman's absence hung over the island like a gathering storm. After days on the run, his face appeared on local news, the lone grainy snapshot of him at a dock haunting every staff break room. The police intensified their search, sending boats to neighboring atolls and questioning fishermen who might have offered him sanctuary. On the island, staff were divided. Some mourned Aman as a good man who'd simply gotten too close to a guest. Others spoke in whispers of betrayal, fear, and jealousy, convinced the scandal would destroy the fragile peace they depended on. Meanwhile, the global media machine dug its claws into the story. International news outlets ran with headlines about murder in paradise, flashing Nisha's wedding photos alongside grainy footage of Aman working behind the hotel bar. Online forums speculated endlessly. Was Nisha a victim, manipulator, or both? Was Aman a lovesick pawn, or a cold-blooded killer driven by obsession? Henrik's family, devastated and angry, held press conferences pleading for the truth and justice for their lost son. Within the resort, gossip became a form of survival. Maids recalled how Nisha and Aman's conversations grew more intimate after sundown, while bartenders swapped theories about the argument that shattered the villa's calm. Some claimed to have heard Aman pacing the staff quarters late at night. Others remembered how Nisha had stared into the ocean for hours after Henrik's body was found, as if searching for answers only she might know. Nisha's time in custody stretched on. Without her phone or passport, she felt herself slowly disconnecting from her old life. Her thoughts circled endlessly. Could she have prevented this? Was each message to Aman a spark in the eventual fire? Her lawyers rehearsed her statements until exhaustion dulled her memory. She fixated on details: Aman's gentle smile, Henrik's laughter before the nightmare began, the glint of her wedding ring lost forever with the tide. Aman, exhausted and haunted, was found hiding in a rundown fishing hut on another island. Maldivian police arrested him at sunrise, his hands shaking, mouth dry. Interrogations began immediately. He denied murder, insisting he only wanted to save Nisha, but inconsistencies in his story and mounting evidence painted a tangled web. Text messages revealed a desperate intimacy between him and Nisha, ranging from promises of escape to late-night fears of Henrik's temper. Both sides accused the other of manipulation, one side out of love, the other out of fear. Back at the resort, life attempted to return to normal. The murder villa remained shuttered, but new honeymooners arrived, oblivious or willfully ignorant of what had happened on those same sands. Yet among the staff, the shock lingered. Some found work at other islands, unwilling to face nervous new guests whose eyes scanned for ghosts behind every palm frond. For months, rumors rippled across the archipelago about forbidden love, betrayal, and the line between passion and violence in paradise. The official inquiry moved slowly. Embassy officials visited, and lawyers debated the role of each player in the tragedy. Press and true crime podcasts dissected every detail, giving the story a life of its own that no verdict could ever truly quiet. In the end, truth was harder to find than the missing ring. As the sun set over Nova Atoll, the beach was washed clean of footprints, but the memories and the scars remained for all who had witnessed that honeymoon turn to horror. The sun rose slowly over the Maldives, casting languid shadows across the turquoise lagoon, but the serenity of that morning felt at odds with the storm swirling behind every closed door at Nova Atoll Resort. The weight of the fatal night pressed on both staff and guests, its echoes sweeping through each whispered conversation and lingering glance. The once idyllic island vibrated with a tension that not even the rhythmic hush of waves or the rustle of palm fronds could mask. Investigators filled the resort with their silent authority, moving deliberately as they sketched chalk outlines of invisible evidence, photographed each speck on tile or indentation in sand, and cataloged every smudge that didn't belong. The honeymoon villa, once a sanctuary, now exuded a hollow coldness, its every room and pathway marked with numbered crime scene tags, a testament to a love story broken by violence. Nisha became a ghost of herself, held in a windowless management office, her wrists faintly bruised from nights of sleepless writhing and endless police questioning. She'd recited the details of that night, shouting by the pool, smashed glass, a thread of blood down to the beach, so often that they became grooves in her memory, too smooth to distinguish truth from trauma. Yet there were always pieces the interrogators could not script, the tangled terror and longing that led to the split second when paradise itself turned deadly. Meanwhile, Aman's disappearance became the island's main obsession. He'd faded into the thick tangle of palms and patchwork fishermen's huts, his absence a puzzle piece conspicuously missing from every timeline. Among staff, rumors twisted and multiplied. Some whispered that he'd left by boat in the night. Others spun stories of secret shelters or accomplices among the workers. There was fear, too. Some worried Aman, desperate and cornered, might yet return. Security logs deepened the mystery. Several cameras on the villa's side, facing the beach, had been tampered with or disabled the night Henrik died. Questions blossomed. Was Aman trying to cover his tracks, or had someone else intervened? Each staff member was questioned, sometimes twice, as investigators sought anyone with a motive to tamper with evidence. Nisha's phone became both her alibi and her undoing. Dozens of messages between her and Aman revealed a fraught intimacy. Confessions of fear, covert plans to leave Henrik, phrases like, "I can't keep this secret," and "what if he finds out," littered the digital record. Police, resort management, and the swirling press reconstructed their doomed orbit from each frantic signal sent before dawn. The community's response was split. Islanders and staff alike buzzed with soft condemnations and tentative sympathy. Foreign guests kept their distance, avoiding the beach fringed by crime tape. Henrik's family arrived, their grief a simmering force that haunted the resort's hallways and lent urgency to every step of the investigation. Counselors were brought in as hotel workers began quietly leaving the island, unable to bear the pressure. Management itself launched a series of internal inquiries, desperate to salvage reputation as the story galloped across travel sites and social media. "Murder in Paradise," read the headlines, each one drawing a harsher spotlight. The looming trial cast a chill over the resort. Legal teams assembled, embassies sought assurances of due process, and witnesses from both staff and guests were tracked down. Prosecutors began constructing a narrative of passion and betrayal, intent on showing premeditated recklessness. The defense responded with pleas of panic, accident, and overwhelming fear. With each passing day, Nisha became more withdrawn, her resolve sapped by the knowledge that her life would be parsed in headlines and hashtags as much as in a courtroom. At night, as waves whispered their ancient secrets beneath a moonlit sky, Nisha sat in silence, staring beyond the walls and imagining the lives continuing out on the mainland, unbroken and unremarkable. She wondered if she would ever know peace again. Days became long stretches of anxious waiting. The police expanded their search for evidence. Divers combed the reef offshore. Forensic teams sifted clothing and linens from the villa. Every visitor and staff member repeated their statements as the investigation sifted for discrepancies. The serenity of the resort was broken. A somber pall replaced postcard calm, and even the wildlife seemed quieter at dusk. Nisha's family, through embassy channels, sent messages of urgent reassurance and pleas she barely dared answer, fearful of making a misstep that could be turned against her in open court. Swedish tabloids and TV hosts debated her guilt and innocence in alternating cycles. Each morning, diplomatic cables whispered quietly in the background, negotiating rights to fair treatment, visits, even possible extradition if the story grew further out of control. Rumors lingered over the investigation. Some staff grumbled that parts of the crime scene had been hastily cleaned by management intent on protecting the resort's lucrative image. Others insisted there was more to the story: jealousy from other employees, an argument that started far before the deadly night, even the possibility that Henrik himself had harbored secrets. As Aman's absence stretched on, the search became desperate. Police patrolled neighboring islands and questioned every fisherman and dockhand. There were many false leads: a sighting at a roadside stand, a report from a passing cargo ship. Days blurred into nights. The island, once a sun-drenched dream, now seemed a place where nobody could disappear fully, yet everyone wanted to. The official inquiry moved slowly, then all at once. When Aman was discovered in a cramped fisherman's hut, hungry and silent, he was arrested without incident. His initial statements were terse, his eyes hollow, and he refused to admit to anything but trying to help Nisha and himself escape a life he described as trapped between 2 countries and 3 fates. When news of Aman's capture broke, the trial's approach sent tremors through the resort. The prosecution claimed the duo had plotted a murder for love and freedom. The defense insisted that passion had spiraled into chaos, with nobody truly in control once violence flared. Each team lined up witnesses: bartenders, maintenance workers, cleaning staff, whose testimonies only deepened the sense of fractured truth. Throughout all of this, Nisha felt herself slowly shedding the last pieces of her previous life. Her husband's family now barely spoke to her save through formal legal channels. The friends who'd wished her happiness on social media weeks before offered only silence. Every night, she replayed the weeks before the tragedy, searching for moments where she might have chosen differently, replaying each word exchanged with Aman, each argument with Henrik. The Nova Atoll Resort, once the kind of place where nothing bad could ever happen, now struggled to return to normal. Staff worked in half-empty halls, frequently glancing over their shoulders. The murder villa remained sealed, its silence thick and impenetrable, a chilling warning for anyone who might mistake beauty for safety. In the aftermath, advocates called for stricter protections for resort staff around wealthy guests, and for better international cooperation in cases of violence abroad. True crime fans around the world shared theories and speculation. To them, the case was another vivid reminder that paradise, too, can bleed. As the first day of trial finally approached, the world held its breath for justice. Reflecting under the blood-orange Maldivian sunset, everyone who remained on the island understood. The tide would eventually wash the sand clean, but the stories of love, desperation, and the night paradise shattered would never fully fade. The Maldivian sun beamed mercilessly over the courthouse, its whitewashed walls standing in stark contrast to the tension building inside. Reporters hovered outside, their whispered speculations a constant hum, as island police, embassy officials, and legal teams swirled through the humid air with determined, measured steps. The final chapter of this once idyllic honeymoon had become an international spectacle, one where every detail, from Nisha's trembling hands to Aman's hollow-eyed silence, would be scrutinized by strangers half a world away. Inside, the courtroom was a paradox of paradise and punishment. Ceiling fans turning lazily, lawyers in linen suits, and rows of spectators pressed shoulder to shoulder, all eyes on the 2 figures who until weeks ago had simply been guests and staff. Nisha, her hair tied back and cheeks gaunt, looked out at the packed room as though from a far-off place. Aman, escorted in handcuffs, avoided her gaze, his wrinkled shirt hanging loosely over a frame made slighter by weeks in custody. The prosecution wasted no time weaving their narrative. They presented recovered text messages, evidence of erased security footage, staff testimonies detailing suspicious meetings and tension in the villa. They played the infamous poolside recording, muffled shouts, a crash of glass, then running footsteps lost in the sound of waves. Henrik's parents took the stand, their grief a raw wound, describing a son, full of life, now lost somewhere nobody could reach him. All these threads painted a portrait of conspiracy and passion gone rancid, of a calculated scheme to be together, no matter the cost. The defense tried to unspool that story, answering tragedy with nuance. Nisha's lawyers pointed to bruises, documented by physicians after her arrest, arguing she had been abused and isolated, desperate enough to seek help wherever she could find it. They emphasized panic and confusion, the chaos of a violent confrontation by the pool, Aman's attempt to intervene, and a fatal moment no one planned. They repeated her tearful apology, her insistence that everything happened too fast. Aman's defenders leaned into a narrative just as fractured. He was under threat of deportation, manipulated by love and survival instinct, swept into violence beyond his control. Testimonies were labyrinthine. Bartenders remembered Nisha's pale face at midnight. Cleaning staff described panic and arguments. Fleeting glimpses of Aman on the beach in the small hours before dawn. A forensic expert detailed the struggle on the pool terrace. The broken glass, the ring left in the sand, the trail of blood between villa and shore. An embassy official recounted frantic calls from both Sweden and India, each family desperate for justice on their own terms. Days passed in a blur of questions and accusations. Journalists updated the world hourly, feeding a global audience hungry for exotic details and personal drama. A paradise lost and innocence twisted. Within the courtroom, though fatigue grew palpable. As closing arguments began, both defendants seemed fated by sorrow and exposure. The verdict arrived after 2 days' deliberation. The judge, voice even and grave, found Aman guilty of manslaughter. Given mitigating factors, his lack of premeditation, history of good conduct, and evidence of confusion, he avoided the harshest penalty, but would serve years in prison far from home. Nisha was found guilty of conspiracy and obstruction, her sentence mitigated by documented abuse and international diplomatic pressure, resulting in a long suspended sentence and conditions restricting travel. For Henrik's family, nothing could restore what was lost. For staff and guests, the story remained a reminder. Beauty can be brittle, and the illusion of safety a fragile thing. After the trial, Nova Atoll Resort moved on, refurbishing the infamous villa, inviting influencers to create new memories over old scars. Some staff left, unable to face lingering questions. Those who remained settled into a routine tinged with caution, remembering the season when love, desire, and desperation pulled paradise apart. Aman sat in his cell, sometimes scribbling letters home, pages torn, then thrown away. Nisha, back in Sweden but marked by scandal, kept mostly to herself, haunted by press coverage and private nightmares. Henrik's parents built a small memorial in his honor at the family cabin, returning to memories not tainted by sand or sea. The Maldives continued welcoming honeymooners with turquoise waters and gentle breezes. Yet in the quiet, after cocktails have stilled and sunlight fades, some staff remember, sometimes telling the story of a bride, a worker, and a love affair that left the island forever changed. The tide, as always, erases footprints, but not the way tragedy can echo, long after paradise appears restored.